What is something more traumatizing than people realize? Having a mom who did not want to be a mom. 100,000%. It's one of the things that bothers me so much about forcing women to have children. They don't want and aren't ready for. There's a lot of suppressed rage from that, and you never forget it. You carry that feeling of being unwanted your entire life. It's fucked up. Being in a toxic workplace, I would be reprimanded for the littlest of things, given attitude for asking a simple question or confirmation, even set up to seem like I messed up something when in reality I found evidence that that wasn't the case. Even showed them this and all I got was a shrug. That was 4 years ago. To this day, in any place I work at, if I'm ever called to the office for something, I immediately get nervous. It's gotten better, but there's still that tiny bit of worry that'll grip me in a chokehold sometimes. My worst job was a job that involved literally 5 hours of work a week. I was working at a farmer's market setting up picnic tables. I thought it would be the absolutely most chill job. This was just a summer thing, me helping out a lady that seemed like a sweet hippie lady. Halfway in, she switched and became hypercritical and demeaning. I would wake up every day of the week, my chest feeling like styrofoam, afraid of the coming Saturday. I finally asked someone I knew who was on the board of directors, and she told me, yeah, she has a real darkness in her soul. Over the years, other people I talked to repeated similar sentiments, often using the same phrase. Imagine what type of person can be famous around town as having a dark soul from the way they manage a once-a-week farmer's market. I spent my middle and high school years being laughed at and used as the butt of jokes. I wasn't just autistic and socially stunted due to trauma. I was also conventionally unattractive. People would take pictures of me and send them to each other. They'd invite me to places just to mock me. They'd bait me into talking or laughing and then record it. It's indescribable. Worse than any physical pain I've ever felt. I was also invited to places just to be mocked and asked to leave. Once I was invited to a house party and I was so fucking excited. I stole 3 beer from my dad and biked to the house thinking I would be cool with booze to share. No one was there. They were at the house next door with the lights off, laughing at me, and they were many. This was 25 years ago. It still makes me feel like crying thinking about it. Growing up in a household where your parents do not love one another and fight constantly. It shapes how you will seek out romantic relationships in the future. Because the fighting and toxicity seems normal to you, affection and kindness will seem foreign to you. I remember seeing my dad kiss my mom's head one time as a kid, and that was the only time I saw something like that. It was when my brother got a neck injury from a football game and we were in the hospital. Staying together for the kids is not the best option. Stay together for the kids and get therapy to try to mend your broken relationship. I feel like my parents could have easily worked out if they actually communicated their issues. I rarely would see them interact. The only time they really spoke to each other was to argue and fight. After years of primary and secondary infertility, which is its own special kind of traumatic, we finally got pregnant only to lose the baby at 11.5 weeks. Everything was fine at my 10-week appointment, but one day I woke up to bleeding. We rushed to the hospital, no heartbeat. I had to have a D&C, and afterwards, my hormones went wild and I gained 60 pounds almost overnight. For various reasons, pretty much everyone in my life was aware of what we were going through. We had just announced our pregnancy and had to unannounce it. We got so many comments and so much advice from well-meaning but clueless people that made any social interaction a landmine for months. I just wanted to make it through my day without crying in public, but I didn't get that luxury and felt so exposed, no privacy. And then at home we had to and still have to, almost 2 years later, answer loads of questions from and try our best to comfort our confused and hurting 5-year-old. She wanted to play pretend like I was having a baby. She had just gotten a doll that cried way too realistically. She demanded to know why I don't have another baby in my tummy. Rinse, repeat. And though everyone likes to remind me that you're most fertile right after a loss, no, I have not conceived again. I also had to avoid the internet completely and even YouTube TV, because all of my ads and recommendations were based on my previous Google searches, and it was nothing but baby for months. Every now and then, I have this post-traumatic stress type episode where in my mind, I'm reliving that day in vivid detail, and I can't snap out of it. On top of the just practical trauma of it all, damn it, I am still grieving my baby. Every would-be milestone is fresh pain. It's been over a year, I think people expect me to be over it, but I know I won't ever be. A part of my heart has broken off and is with my baby. I counsel and schedule in-home euthanasia for pets. And pet loss is what we call a disenfranchised grief, meaning that there isn't the personal or societal recognition of how hard it is, let alone the resources to address it. There are a lot of studies that show that pet loss is just as impactful on people as the loss of a human relative. I talk with folks every day who burst into tears at me, a virtual stranger, telling me that they weren't this messed up when their grandfather died, and they don't know how to deal with it, and they feel broken because they feel worse, and that they feel ashamed to tell anyone else. I spend a lot of time reassuring people, as much as I can, that it is normal and I am there, and that they are far from alone. Being a victim of bad childhood, teenage bullying, and the mental effects it can have on a child later in life into adulthood. People talk about the serious effects of child abuse by parents and domestic abuse, and how it can negatively affect people's mental health in the future, but people seem to gloss over or trivialize bullying, which is abuse and has shown to have bad mental health effects on its victims. Some poor kids even take their own life because the mental effects are that bad. I never hear or see people say it builds character to kids who are abused by their parents, or wives abused by their husbands, but we tell kids, teenagers who are abused by bullies, as if their pain they go through isn't that bad, or somehow it's justifiable and good for them. They have been stories where the bullies actually have murdered their victims. Don't understand how that builds character. Mild sexual molestation, by which I mean a squeezed bum, or someone grabbing your boob over clothes, or brushing your crotch over clothes. My oldest kid recently confided in us that she was groped by a distant family member several years ago. She was 9 years old. Now a lot of stuff makes sense. Her depression, self-harming, high anxiety, and refusing to hug me or her dad anymore. If I ever see that guy again, I'll kill him. And before anyone asks, yes, she is in therapy, and yes, we've been to the police. That's currently in motion. We're also outing him to the whole extended family, and they can do with that what they will. Reading the news and using social media, like Reddit, that heavily relies on sharing news and negative opinions, scenarios, photos, etc. It's literally damaging our psyches, because we are not meant to be under constant bombardment of mostly negative information. My therapist told me that she is convinced that taking a few weeks, maybe even months off being online would vastly improve the mental health of most of her patients. I listened to her, and now I often take media breaks. Sometimes I just disappear for a weekend, sometimes for longer. The effect on my mental health is almost immediate and very noticeable. Pregnancy, birthing, and postpartum. Amen. This is not discussed nearly enough. I hated being pregnant. Hated it. I hated not being in control of my body. I hated having to constantly think about what I ate, drank, and otherwise put into my body. I hated being sick for months at a time. I hated being uncomfortable. I hated the heartburn. Pregnancy was 100% a means to an end for me. 100%. I also think birth trauma is dismissed. I was very fortunate to have a fantastic OB for my first child, and my OB was joined by an awesome midwife for my second child. I had a wonderful, positive, amazing birth experience both times, where I felt I had autonomy, was heard, and was given top-notch care. It's amazing how often that does not happen. Some of these OB think they are gods, and the women giving birth are just a job to be taken care of expeditiously as possible, and not an actual person going through a major, and sometimes frightening, medical event. The whole birth industry in the US needs to do better, a lot better. I wish my husband understood how awful some parts of pregnancy, but especially childbirth and postpartum were. They were great for him. Everyone congratulated him for having a beautiful pregnant wife and then an adorable healthy baby. Meanwhile, I felt trapped in my own body that was constantly in pain for 9 months, and then was one I didn't recognize anymore afterwards, and didn't work the way it used to, and it still didn't belong to me. I had a newborn who needed it for milk and comfort, even while I was still in so much pain recovering from an emergency C-section. But everyone was so happy for me. I felt wrong feeling the way I was feeling. That was in 2021. I live in Texas, knowing that our leaders here want to force women to go through this and don't give a shit. If they die trying feels like a slap in the face. My husband and I wanted our baby and planned for him. I can't imagine the lengths I would have gone to make what I was experiencing stop, if I didn't want the thing inside me like women will have to do now. Thank you for seeing and understanding us. Seriously, I grew up with medical neglect and had chronic illnesses. At the time I saw a GP as an adult, they prescribed antidepressants and supplements, and if I pressed, they'd run a couple blood tests and gloss over it, saying I was fine and healthy. I cannot tell you how many times I brought up concerns about conditions, and they'd respond with someone would have caught it by now. It took years to get a diagnosis. Only after it became so severe I was bedridden and had gained a ton of weight when I couldn't walk. It turns out one of those tests showed an autoimmune condition 5 years before that. I've spent the last few years getting better and the doctor's responses have been weird. It's like they're struggling to reconcile that I'm the same person that came in there in a wheelchair, that it would make sense to just blame it on addiction. Sometimes it's like they're too afraid to ask how I've gotten better when now I tend not to follow through on their suggestions or schedule appointments. I had a huge amount of digestive trouble and a fair amount of pain several years ago. The second person who took a look at me was a nurse practitioner who gave me an ultrasound and told me I had gallstones and needed to go see a gastroenterologist about fixing it. I went to several gastroenterologists who all told me that the gallstones were not the problem and that it was probably anxiety or just something I'll have to live with, and wanted me to take tons of medication for it that didn't do anything. For 6 months, those doctors kept insisting that it had nothing to do with the gallstones and that anxiety was driving the issues and the pain. After a while I just completely gave up and went to a distant doctor in another district who looked at it, confirmed the gallstones, and scheduled me to have my gallbladder removed. After the surgery, he told me that my gallbladder was one of the most diseased he had ever seen and that it was a good thing they removed it before the problems became more threatening. All of the problems went away pretty much immediately. 3 other doctors spent months making me suffer and spent thousands of dollars while telling me to ignore the identified problem. Really destroy my trust in doctors. Also being accused of things you did not do and just overall controlling behavior. I grew up with an incredibly suspicious mother and I genuinely was not doing a thing because I was so terrified of her. I'd be like, hey, and she'd start talking about how she feels like there's something in not telling her. And if I said I'm not hiding anything, she would not believe me and keep trying to get me to admit something and say the truth will always gonna come to light, and I would genuinely have no idea what she's talking about or even hinting at. She would check the trash cans to see what I was throwing out, check my room and take things out and deny it. One time I literally went from my room to the bathroom naked, and she accused me of doing some weird sexual shit on video chat in my room. I was like 15. How did we even get to that? Knowing there's nothing you can do or say to prove to that person you genuinely did not do anything is one of the most anxiety-inducing situations to be in, especially as a young child and your parent is extremely volatile physically and emotionally and takes nothing to escalate to abusing you. Juvenile detention. If you talk to any career criminal in Florida, their downward spiral usually starts with, or at least involves, a stay at JIC camp. Kids are put in an environment where authority figures are physical and sexually abusive. They are introduced to prison gang politics and taught to respond to the slightest disrespect with extreme violence to avoid being punked. To say they tend to come out bad would be an understatement. A lot of juvenile facilities, basically trauma factories, where housing kids who often have trauma in the first place until they turn 21 and are sent to adult prison or set loose on the general public. I think when it comes to bullying, even if the bullying itself isn't that bad, what's awful is the constant dread it creates. It hardwires hypervigilance into the victim's brain, so they are feeling the effects and suffering long after it's gone. Edit. I commented because I think it is hard for people who haven't gone through it to realize how damaging bullying is, and I try to raise awareness where I can. The hypervigilance is hard for people to comprehend. I'm afraid I'm not doing a great job explaining it, and I'm sorry about that. Edit 2. I can't reply to everyone, so I'm going to put some more information and resources here. I found out about CPTSD on Reddit and found a lot of resources on that sub. This is kind of an a la carte menu of things to try if you are interested. I am an expert in nothing but my own experiences, so this should not be considered complete or appropriate for everyone. Cognitive behavior therapy. Feeling good burns. CBT helped me with my self-esteem, and catastrophizing EMDR therapy You need a certified therapist for this. Helped reduce my triggers. I do use it to process things when I am in a bad spot still, but you are supposed to start with a therapist. Teet Walker. CPTSD from surviving to thriving. I'm not exaggerating when I say this book saved my life. I adapted his emotional flashback management plan, wrote it down on a dozen index cards, practiced it when I didn't need it so I was able to use it better when I did. Kind of like a fire drill for my brain. The one thing I disagree with Pete Walker on is handling the internal critic. Through internal family systems I came to know all my parts, and I believe they formed to help me. I don't shout them down, like Pete recommends. If that works for someone, I am happy. Whatever works. I got to know my parts and got them other jobs which they were happy to take. My self-harm part became a self-help part, suggesting things we could do for distraction when things get bad. Internal Family Systems Therapy by Schwartz. I got the book from the library and basically started talking into the void. I have a whole community in my head who I talk to and address issues with. It's a little out there, but it works for me and it's the only thing that has ever helped with the hypervigilance. I have 3 guys in the control room and a whole team of forest ranger types out in the field. They are constantly checking and anticipating. My work with them mostly involves getting them to stand down and just do whatever they want. Because most of the time, I am in a safe environment now. They formed to protect me in childhood and never left their posts. Whatever happened and wherever you are now, you deserve to feel okay. Just knowing that you are no longer powerless and can work on healing is a big step. I wish you all the best and hope everyone finds something to help them. Take care. Edit. Again. Sorry. One more thing which was really the first thing. I'm not multitasking very successfully right now. I started with good old regular talk therapy and eventually group therapy. Having the therapist and the people in group who really understood what I went through and how it felt tell me was not okay and I didn't deserve it was cathartic and extremely helpful. It was an important step in the process. Okay, another edit. Someone else recommended this book. It seems like our reading lists were very similar. Would also highly recommend Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors by Janina Fisher. Her work is relatively new, but she takes ifs and makes it more effective for those who have higher levels of trauma.